The Ravens Flock presents The Black Files, an uncensored interview and review podcast for all geek fandom.
Welcome everybody, friends and pals, guys and gals, boys and girls around the world. Pop Squad, pop up in a cold one. You are listening in to a bonus edition of The Black Files, the uncensored interview and review podcast of the Ravens Flock. And of course, this is your host, Juan Arauz. And I know I'm doing this a little bit differently, but that's because this really is a very different type of like sound, audio, interview, discussion experience or whatever. Basically, this is meant to be an accompaniment to the episode where we have our memoriam for Sulli and for Mark Dmuchowski. Specifically, this is the full recording that I took in my research for talking about Mark Dmuchowski's life and his contributions to the Florida anime community by speaking with one of his closer friends, Roy Harms, who is the founder of MetroCon, and he was close friends with Mark Dmuchowski for 35 years or so. Now, I'm putting this up so that folks can understand some of the things that I referred to when I was having the discussion with Jose and Casper, and just so folks can have a little more insight about Mark's life from someone who knew him best. And as we stated multiple times, and as will be stated multiple times across this entire recording, people might actually be upset or angry or incensed or however, being indignant over the fact that I'm speaking with Roy Harms about this, because there is a bit of a controversy that happened with him 10 years ago. There was an issue that he was involved with, and that's not something that I was interested in discussing, because that wasn't something that we were looking to discuss in the first place in regards to Roy, because this entire recording was not meant to be about Roy in any way, shape, or form. This is meant to be about Mark. So the fact of the matter is that people are very likely going to become upset. They're going to be angry. They're going to say, oh, Juan Arauz is enabling Roy, and oh, Juan's a bad guy because he's talking to Roy Harms. And that's not... Folks who are trying to divert this entire episode of the Black Files into that idea, they're not being honest actors. They're not speaking from a sense of context, because this isn't this entire recording, as I'm stating again, is not about Roy. It's about Mark. It's about Mark's life. It's about Roy's experience with Mark, because he knew him longer than anyone else did. And if anyone wants to try and make this about Roy, then that's their problem, and they can take this and for what it's worth, and understand that we're not interested in getting into that issue. For people who do know what the issue is and are listening to this episode and listening and understanding that, okay, we're not here to get any tea about Roy. We're not here to get any drama bullshit about, conventions and all that. No, that's not what I'm about. That's not what this episode's about. And that's not what people are interested in. We're here to talk about Mark Dmuchowski. And if you have an issue with that, well, that's an issue that you're going to have. Not me, and not anyone else involved in the Ravens Flock. And for the record, I want this stated, and I want this known for anyone else who's listening to this. This was brought up as an idea to have as a supplemental episode to go with Mark, because of how much detail Roy gives us in Mark's life. And to that I say, if you want to learn more about this interesting man who has shuffled off the mortal coil regrettably, then this would be a good insight about him. And I hope that people will take this with the context in which it's presented. So I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm going to go ahead and let you folks listen in, and you can make your own determination about Mark's life. So here we go. Enjoy. All right, I'm starting my recording here. All
right.
I've got Roy Harms, the original founder of MetroCon, and closest friend to the late Mark Dmuchowski, and this is just a little review on Mark's influence in the con community, and any other stories that Roy may want to share here.
All right. And hey, no problem. I don't mind you using this recording for any purpose you need to for Mark at all, whether it be either a transcript of it or if you find an audio clip in here that you think would be worthwhile to use, that's completely up to you. Just let me know if you do or not.
Of course.
So I appreciate it.
Of course.
All right.
When I put everything together, I guess I'll be calling you either Saturday night or Sunday night before I publish it, and I'll let you know what, if anything, I wound up using.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, the information in it, this is going to be a bit of an info dump, but just to see where it's going. Also, again, I mean, Mark and I did a lot of stuff together, but I don't need any credit for anything. He, if it wasn't for him, none of this would have happened. So, all right. So let me back up and just tell a bit from my point of view on things and see where this leads us. But all right. So just so you know, for me, basically, I started watching anime when I was a kid. I have to give a little bit of a backstory here just so you can get where I'm going with this. So I watched anime as a kid growing up. I saw Speed Racer, a little thing called Prince Planet. No one knew what it was. It was in Chicago. And then when I got down here to Florida, I wound up watching Gatchaman and a few other things, but finally it was Robotech. When I watched the first episode of that, I thought it was really cool. Well, I finally found out that, yeah, it was Japanese. Because, I mean, I kind of figured it out, but I had never seen the original. There's no way to see it at that time. But when I was going to this comic book store down here, and this is important, it was called The Time Machine. Well, there was two stores. It was The Time Machine, The Time Machine 2. And the second one, The Time Machine 2, was over on 41 down here, and that was the one we really liked going to.
41, so US 41?
On US 41, down over here in Bradenton. So, and it's gone now. It's completely gone. But back in the early mid 80s, it was here. And so I was over there, and they had a bunch of imported Macross models, and that's when I started collecting Hobby Japan, which is a model book from Japan. And I collected a bunch of stuff that I saw because I'm like, oh my God, this is the original Japanese models. So I started putting those together. Well, the comic book store finally decided to run their own little comic convention. And back in the 80s, those were really tiny, but the two stores were run by a man and woman that they were married. And for God's sakes, I can't remember their names at the moment, but he did a lot of stuff with wrestling. So he wanted to show off wrestling, and she really liked comic books. So they merged this together. So they asked me, well, we know you're buying all these models, and you've shown us some of them. Well, we know this other guy. He's going to be there, and he's showing Macross the movie, I guess. And I hadn't seen it. I had heard about it because of all the anime books, but I didn't have a way to get it at that point. I still hadn't really discovered getting anime on VHS tape back in the day, because the only way to get stuff back then was to mail it back and forth and find somebody that had it. Well, I hadn't discovered that aspect of it yet. So the convention came, and I set up my model display, and so that's the first time I ever met Mark, who was, I met him, he's in the wheelchair, and he was, he was showing the copy of Macross the movie, and we wound up talking about a lot of stuff. And then after that,
so he wound up so Mark introduced you to Macross the movie, and so he was the one who had a contact in Japan, and he got a pirated VHS tape.
Oh yeah,
or?
Back in the day, the only way to get stuff at all was copies of things. If you were trying to get an actual VHS tape from Japan, like an original, well, good luck. It was almost impossible, So he had a copy of it that he got from somewhere, and I don't remember where he got it from. Even today, I don't remember where he got it from. I know he told me, but for God's sakes, I can't remember. But I knew about the movie, but I had just never seen it at that point. So I watched it for the first time sitting there and was just blown away how much different it was from the original. Obviously, even in Japan, they did the original and then they did the movie. So, I would imagine it was the same reaction anybody would have over there once they watch the series and then the movie. So, but after that, for the first time ever, he had a copy that I saw this. He had a copy of Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind. And that was, from what I thought, was the first time that I had seen anything from Hayao Miyazaki. And obviously that just was wow. I mean, once you're introduced to Hayao Miyazaki for the first time in your life, especially if you were from that era, and it was not something that you could find anywhere, that was, could be potentially a life-changing moment. So
Nausicaa, from what I know here, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind came out in 1984. So
right.
That sound about right?
Yes, because I met him. This was in 1986, I believe, and I'll get to the date in a minute, and I can, because I can. This is how I can verify when it was. At least I'd have to go back and try to remember exactly when it was for all this, but I've got a baseline point of it. Okay. Because that was the first time I ever saw that. Now, real quick, I had seen the old video game Cliff Jumper, which used footage from Castle Cagliostro, but at that point in time, I also didn't know that was Miyazaki. So, but I was like, this is familiar for some reason. So we talked for a while, and that was cool. But back in the day, we didn't have cell phones and stuff, and I didn't get his number. I don't think I got his number because I was only, I believe, 17 at the time when I saw all of this and when I met him. So, we packed up our stuff, we went home, whatever, cool. And I didn't talk to Mark or run into him again until I went to go see Transformers the movie in the theater. And when the movie was over, I walked out and, well, there was Mark. And he had, gone to see the same movie. So we started talking. And we're standing outside this movie theater and, started asking about anime and clubs and stuff like that. And we decided there wasn't anything around in the area, and maybe we should start one. And so the baseline point I have for everything, the reference is when Transformers the movie was out in theaters, because that is when we met. So it was the first week that movie was out. So I'd have to look up the dates. But so that's when we decided to start an anime group. And so from that point on, Mark and I had started hanging out together, and that's when he had found several lists of people in the country that were trading VHS tapes. So we decided to pool our resources and send videotapes off in an exchange manner. So what would happen is you could send people blank tapes. They would record stuff on it for you and then send it back. And then, we would, consequently, we would make a list and then send stuff back. And so we decided to start our own club. But back in the day, it wasn't like today at all. If you wanted to be a recognized club back in the day, there was a group called the Cartoon Fantasy Organization. And it was run by a guy named Randall Stuckey. And I believe it was out of, I got to think, somewhere in Texas. If you wanted to be, I guess he set himself up as he had this big giant library. And he was trying to be kind of the hub of all anime in, I guess, the U.S. Because, since he had this library, he was trading so much. If you wanted to be an official recognized club, you had to have a charter. And then once you wrote up this charter and sent it into them and they approved you, then they had this little fanzine they would send out, once a month, and it was all Xeroxed. And, back in the day, there wasn't like, oh, let me get on my Photoshop and I'll knock something out. It was
it was like copy. It was literally like clipping out, fan art, pasting it, and Xeroxing and hoping to God it doesn't burn.
That's how we did all of our old con guides back in the day. Yeah, it was cutting out, literally cut, paste, layout. It was awful compared to today, but, it's all we had. So we actually drew up this big giant charter on trading and everything else and like how we trade stuff and what we do. And then we started talking to the Selby Library down here. And in 1987, we formed, potentially one of the first anime clubs in Florida that we knew of. And So we were going along for a while, and we talked to the Sulli library, and they let us show some stuff. And then we found out about a group in Tampa, and it was called Tampa Mega Road. And Mega Road was the name of the, I guess, the SDF-3 from Macross back in the day, or the proposed name of it. And so they had called themselves that. And that's when we finally met the Tampa group that we associated with for years after that. Which was, it consisted of, let's see, oh my God, Wendell, Bonnie, Casey, James. Anyway, our whole amount of people expanded. And so we wound up going up to Tampa almost every weekend to Tampa Lanes. And Tampa Lanes, starting in the late 80s, became the hub for anime hangouts.
Tampa
and
Lanes,
unbeknownst to them, I'm sorry, say again?
You mean Tampa Bay? It's the Tampa Lanes, the bowling alley?
Tampa Lanes, the bowling alley.
Hot damn.
And yeah, for years, every weekend, our clubs would meet there. And it's kind of funny because other clubs wound up meeting there later, and they didn't even know the legacy that place had. So, yeah, going back to the 80s, Tampa Lanes was it. That's where the anime clubs hung out. We didn't get to show anything there. But, that was where we'd hang out and, we get together and then we go back to somebody's house and we watch stuff. So we started copying tapes and trading tapes and everything else. And Mark was pretty instrumental in things because Mark really liked anything to do with Leiji Matsumoto, which was, he did Yamato and Captain Harlock. And he was a big fan of anything related to Leiji Matsumoto whatsoever. So when later on when Interstellar 555 came out, Daft Punk, he was just like flipping out, so
this is the most beautiful thing ever.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that it all related to everything, that was amazing. So Mark's big thing was always the esoteric type of things, or the stuff that made you think more. He really gravitated to stuff like that. He did like action adventure stuff and everything, but one of the other things that he really liked, okay, let me back up. When I met him, I was super into anything mech related. So if it had a mech in it, man, I was like, yeah, giant robot, cool.
Yeah.
Well, he showed me this episode of something, and I was like, I don't really care for this. As a matter of fact, I don't like this at all. And he was like, no, dude, this show's really good. You got to give it a chance. And I had seen one episode, or part of an episode at a library, and I was like, whatever. Well, we got invited up to Tampa to a guy's house, and he wanted to show this movie that was from this TV series. And I walked in halfway through this movie, and I had no idea what it was. I'm like, this thing is gorgeous. What is this? I need to see this whole movie. I need a copy of this movie right now. And that was the first time I ever saw a full movie on Urusei Yatsura. It was Urusei Yatsura Only You, which then became probably my favorite anime of all time. And it was Mark's. I know that because he wore the character, he wore a shirt with the main character on it all the time, which was Lum, who wound up being one of the most famous characters in anime in Japan ever. And so he always wore, this shirt. Well, anyway, the club we had started was the Minnesota Anime Group. And, you take the first three letters, that was MAG. Excuse me. So MAG. And we thought we were so clever because, back in the day it was like, oh man, if we did a fanzine, we'd call it Mag-a-zine. We're awesome. We were dumb kids. Yeah. So, and Mark was 10 years older than me. So I was 17 and he was 27. And, when we first met. So we did this for a while. And when we finally met the Tampa group, well, we decided we needed to expand out a bit. And we weren't just Minnesota anymore because both groups, well, what happened was the Tampa group kind of had a falling out with who their leader was. And then they decided, well, hey, let's all just make one kind of big group. And we were really into Tenchi Muyo at the time. And there was a thing where the royalty was, I guess it was from the planet Jirai. And so we decided to call ourselves Jirai. And it stood for something. Of course, us with acronyms. It stood for Japan's unique realm of animated imagery. And so we made up shirts, and that was cool. And, this was about the time that we went to Necronomicon for the first time. So, well, Mark and I went to Necronomicon for the first time in 1988. And during the course of that, there was a guy there and this is what kind of started the fallout with the Tampa group, with their original leader, is the guy decided for some crazy reason in his head that he was going to show this anime called Cream Lemon, which was a hentai at 3 p.m.
Oh, no.
Now, what possessed him to do this, we don't know.
Holy Lord, no.
Yeah,
well,
but and remember, this was 1988. So this isn't today.
Back in 1988, they would have thought that regular ass anime was like the work of the devil and shit.
Right. Well, and the only reason they got away with it as much as they did, was it was Necronomicon, which was a sci-fi / kind of horror convention.
Yeah.
But they didn't get away with it. No. Debbie Hicks, who ran it, was like, no, you are not doing this. So we talked to Debbie afterwards, and we were like, hey, we'll do it. And she was like, oh, we don't know about that. And Mark, who was part of Stonehill at that point, convinced her that we could do this. And she said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 6 hours over the course of the whole weekend. And so Mark had found this thing that he really, really, really liked. And I'm going to tell you, if anybody hasn't seen this, they need to go see it. And go look it up on YouTube. It's all on YouTube. And I'm sure, Juan, you've seen it, which is Daicon 4. Well, Daicon 3 and 4. And Daicon was a fan film done that opened up the original Daicon convention in Japan. And it was done by a fan group that originally finally became Gainax. And
wow.
That right there was the first thing that we played for Necronomicon, ever. And I think then we led into Noshka's Secret of Blue Water and some other stuff. So starting in 1989 is when we did the first Necronomicon together. And so eventually that grew in the 90s to when we finally had 2 straight full rooms of anime. And there was no anime conventions, down here for a long time. And we were the only source of doing it. Now, I'm going to throw out a number here, and you're going to be like, that's low. But consider this. In the 90s, when we had to do nothing but get tapes from Japan or find other people that had them or find a vendor that had bootleg stuff, getting tapes was hard. It wasn't nowadays where you can just go up and hit a button and watch anime, whatever you want. It was, if you wanted to watch something, well, number one, if you want to watch something specific and you're trying to find something specific that you saw in a Japanese magazine, well, you had to go try to find that. But half the time you just run into stuff. Like, to give you an example, the first time I ever watched Ranma 1/2, I had gone up to Chicago and I had looked up what Japanese restaurants are there. And I would try to get lucky to see if they had a video library with it, kind of like a Blockbuster back in the day.
Right.
And sure enough, some of them did. And I would go in there and ask for the animation stuff, and they'd look at me like, it's kind of weird. And so I got lucky, and I found a tape up there of something that was Ranma 1/2, and I had heard about it because at that time I was following Rumiko Takahashi, and it was the first 4 episodes, and it was a month after it had come out because they would record stuff for a month, put 4 episodes on a tape, and then ship it over to America, to whatever store it was. And the owners they had friends over there trying to get them stuff because they could rent it over here, and it was mostly for any Japanese populace. But when anime clubs found out about it, you'd get people wandering in, Americans wandering in like, hey, do you have a thing? And they'd look at us weird and, why do you want to rent this? Because there's no subtitles. Oh, for God's sakes, good luck. If you had something that had subtitles on it, it was gold, and usually you couldn't read them because also, since you had to record stuff on tapes, it was like 8th generation. So, it was like, I got a copy from you, and it came down from you, and you, and you, and you.
Yeah,
and so we had this stuff that was...
So even if there was any sort of subtitle, whoever got at that point, if it's been copied for forever and a day, it winds up, video degradation is a pain in the ass.
Oh yeah, and so 90%, if not more, of everything we had was not subtitled, and the only way you could find out what it was about back then was fanzines. So Mark subscribed to a massive amount of fanzines, and so that was the thing. So we got a lot of stuff in. I started subscribing too, but Mark was the one that really did a lot of it. Now, at some point in time during all of this, what happened was, and this is, again, goes back to the falling out of the Tampa group. So there was this guy, and I'm just going to say his name was Neil, because his name was Neil, but I'm not going to give his last name here because it's been so long ago, it just doesn't matter. He decided he wanted more tapes. And so he started writing the Cartoon Fantasy Organization and using Mark's name and my name and trying to get tapes sent to a different address. Because you're only supposed to send out so many tapes at a time because, everybody wanted stuff.
Yeah.
So he was trying to get more, and he started using that. And so what happened was, since the Cartoon Fantasy Organization was the hub of all of this, they found out something shady was going on, and they didn't know who was actually doing what. So they banned all of Florida. So, and I want you to think about this. Back in the day, the only way to get tapes in and out anywhere was bootleg or sending out through official trading groups. And sure, there was a lot of other people you could get stuff from if you dug for it. I mean, you had to dig. Because, again, remember, no internet.
Yeah.
Everything was done by mail. So it's not like I'm just going to type in an email address and get something from somebody.
Yeah.
No. You had to do dial-up and BBSs, and if you were lucky and you'd find stuff somewhere, whatever. It was difficult. So all of Florida got blackballed, like hardcore. And that meant no anime in or out through any, and I'm going to use air quotes here, official channels. So nobody on a list would trade anything with Florida because of what this guy Neil did. And it was more than that. I mean, he did a lot of stuff behind people's backs. So Mark found Randall Stuckey's phone number, and through a correspondence, and it took a while, mind you, set up talking to him. And so we got on the phone with them and spent about an hour talking to Randall, and we got it all straightened out. And now remember, this wasn't like, oh man, we heard about this. Oh man, we got it fixed. This was like a 3 to 6 month block. I think it was more like 6, because we were like, what do we do? And so it was about a 6 month time period where people weren't getting anime into Florida at all. And so Mark called him, we talked to him, and we explained the whole situation and finally got everything fixed. So the anime started flowing back into Florida again at that point. And Mark was very instrumental in that. So the fact that, not only, was it cut off down here for a long time, and the fact that, Mark had started one of the first anime clubs, and I will just say I was along for it, because he wrote up the charter and a bunch of other stuff, that he was very instrumental in making sure that it kept going. He had a big passion for it, and he wanted everybody to go to Necronomicon. So back in the day, this is what I was getting to with the numbers. Yeah. Back in the day, we finally broke 100 people in a viewing room. And that was staggering for the time, because anime was so underground. It wasn't mainstream, and people aren't going to understand that now, really. So the work for back in the day to get 100 fans of anime in a room was hard, incredibly hard, because also, if you liked anime, well, you like that cartoon crap. You like that kiddie stuff, and people looked down on it back then. I'm not talking the jocks looked down on it. I'm not talking about that. They did. I'm talking about society in general looked down on it because they considered it kiddie cartoons. Even hardcore sci-fi people at that point were like, what's this crap? And you had to get them to watch it, and then they'd be like, yeah, it's cool. If somebody liked it, they'd be like, yeah, whatever, I don't like that, and they'd watch it secretly or whatever. Sure. And I'm not talking about R-rated, hentai stuff at all. I'm talking about normal stuff. Also, it wasn't subtitled. So why would you want to watch something that wasn't subtitled, you didn't understand? Who cares about this crap,
Right, so it wasn't subbed, it wasn't dubbed, it was pirated underground. It was basically a whole sort of like, I guess you could call it either an underground or black market for anime distribution in the U.S.
Absolutely. If you were into anime, it was difficult. It was a very difficult hobby to be into because everything that you got was in Japanese. And so, you tried to take a Japanese course or learn something or whatever so you could figure it out. Nowadays, you don't have to do that. It's just instant. For God's sakes, we have Google Translate. You could translate something just by having it play and listening to it. You can, if somebody wanted to translate stuff. I mean, we have, for God's sake, we have stuff coming out of Japan that's translated in less than a week and up online anywhere. Right. If you want current running things, I mean, it is so easy to do. Back then, good luck. It was hard. So what happened was finally anime started becoming a little bit more mainstream. And things were a bit better. We started seeing stuff coming out at Suncoast Video. People started realizing, hey, there's money to be made here. And so about the time we got everything fixed in Florida, and we had Florida, removed from the blackball list, was when finally things started hitting to where it was like, oh, here's some other stuff coming out. We would sit back in the day and we'd be like, Dragon Ball, that'll never come to America. That's so violent, the censors would never allow it. And of course, it took years for people to finally be like, okay, that's okay. But back in the day, no way in heck.
No, motherfuckers are getting dismembered. You have people exploding on each other.
No,
you have child abuse because Gohan was getting slapped like a motherfucker.
Oh, yeah, and the thing is, even back in the day, like, or even now, even now we have some censorship. Back then, they would have never considered it. It just was like, nope, off the table. Well, okay, so anime started getting more prevalent. And one day, we had our friend from from the Tampa group, Bonnie. And Bonnie called up and said, hey, there's this thing going on at a museum, at the Tampa Museum, and it's going to be this Japanese exhibit. Maybe you guys should go down there and pitch showing some anime. And so she found out about that. So, we went down there and pitched to them on doing some anime for it. And, after talking to them for an afternoon and having a big meeting with everybody, they finally agreed. And so Mark's big thing this entire time as well was anime music videos. So he was always constantly trying to find people that had videotapes of anime music videos. Because back in the day, if you wanted to do an anime music video, you had to have 2 VCRs. And then you would have to try to splice it all together. And, for God's sakes, every time you did a screen cut, you get the little rainbow wow, wow, wow thing in there, because of tapes. Yeah. So if you had a really good-looking music video, then people had used really good equipment to do it. And so, so anime music videos have been around since, even back when, the stuff was, hard to find. And the one good thing about that is there weren't subtitles on them at that point, so somebody couldn't just take something that had subtitles and try to do it because, subtitles don't match from scene to scene to scene, when they're doing a music video. And that was a part of music video competitions where if you had subtitles and stuff, you'd say, well, you're disqualified, unless it fit. But Mark was, really enamored with music videos, so we decided that we would try to get a projector and project all these music videos on the side of the Tampa Museum, and they let us do it. And so that was Mark's idea. And so for 6 hours on a night, we were showing anime music videos on the side of the Tampa Museum in downtown Tampa.
And when was this?
I'm sorry?
What year was this? When was this happening?
I think that was finally around 2002. 2001, 2002. I can find the papers and find out when this was, but that was finally around that time because of this, we were talking to Debbie Hicks, who, is one of the chairman over at Stonehill. I'm not sure what her title is exactly after all these years. They're kind of a collective. The way their group works, they vote on everything. But she usually is kind of like, I guess, the moderator for everything. And I've known Debbie since 1988. So, since we've been going to Necronomicon for so long. Well, we'd been going to Necro, and we built up this very large anime base there. And at that point in time, a couple of little cons had sprung up, this little thing called Anime Festival Orlando, and, there was another one called J-Con, cool, and they had just started. They were only been a couple years old, but they were still small. They were still more like a club, I guess you could say, just a larger club.
Right.
And so Debbie was like, well, why don't you guys start your own convention? And, I just laughed. I'm like, Debbie, we don't know anything about running conventions. And she's like, you've been working for us for 15 years. What are you talking about? And we're like, maybe. And it's like, but we can't do that. And so, we pretty much, bantered around with this idea. And finally we were like, maybe we could do this.
Maybe there's something there.
Right. Now, to back up just a little bit more, all right, now I needed to get you to that point so I can mesh something in.
Yep.
All right. So in 1999, it was 1999, I believe it was. Well, we were like, anime is never going to come over here much. It's going to be a little bit, so we got Toonami, we had some other things. But then something was coming out that I was like, holy crap, I can't believe this. This can't be true. There's going to be this, they're bringing Gundam over here. They're going to have Gundam Wing on Cartoon Network. Okay, that's crazy. So I just happened to one day be sitting at my job, which was, I was the lead designer at a web design firm. And I typed in, I went to, back in the day, it was can't remember the website, but it's the equivalent of GoDaddy today. And I typed in GundamWing.com. Oh, look at that, it's available. And back in the day, if you wanted a domain name, it wasn't like $3, it was $75 because it was all like brand
pondering.
new.
Don't tell me you mean to tell me were you having like a moment of temptation there, like I could be the first to own GundamWing.com and no one can stop me.
And I did. So I bought GundamWing.com, and apparently, I put up a little website. I was like, oh yeah, I own this. Okay, great. And I put it up on the company servers because they said you could have one website. And I went, okay, one website, cool, I'll buy this. And the show came out, and I crashed all their servers. They were like, what did you do? And I'm like, I don't know. The show came out and everything, And then I found out that America Online, for some crazy reason, in their little database before Google was a really big thing, they had listed us as the official North American website.
Well, it was GundamWing.com, of course. Like you can't get more official than that.
Except that wasn't Bandai, and I was like, oh my god, I'm going to get killed. So that's why when they came out with GundamOfficial.com, that was because I bought GundamWing.com. They were not happy. But they never came to me. They never asked for it. They never did anything. So I was like, all right. So then I went, well, what else is out there? And I went, how about Escaflowne? Because at the time, Vision of Escaflowne was big. And I typed in Escaflowne.com, and that came up, and I went, oh, that's not taken. I'll buy that. And then I typed in, what about CowboyBebop.com?
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh, that was bought a week ago. Suck. I guess they got on to me. So from that point on, once I bought that, I noticed immediately things were being bought up instantly by the companies. So, especially Bandai for some reason. I don't know why. Not sure. So I think I caused a problem there. And the reason I'm saying what happened with me is because it relates. So after owning this for a bit, I had said, well, here's the problem. Gundam Wing is going to end. And once Gundam Wing ends, what are we going to do? So we need another website for that, so let's make an umbrella website. And we didn't know what to call it. Anime something. And so Mark and I sat down. We came up with a bunch of different names. Anime Planet, Anime Meteor, Anime whatever, Guy Rugger, Big Kicker, whatever. So we came up with all these names, and nothing was right. And I was like, but it needs to be a hub. It needs to be a something. It needs to cover everything. It's a big umbrella thing, and I kind of wanted to represent a city and different stuff. And Mark's like, well, what about Anime Metro? And I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty good. So Mark came up with the name Anime Metro. And we had that. And so Anime Metro existed as a web community for a couple years.
So and out of Anime Metro, you guys.
Well, I'm getting to that. Yeah.
I'll let you do it because I'm putting it together. But you go ahead.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But when Debbie came and said, you guys could do a con, we're like, no, we can't. And she was like, yeah. So we were like, well, what do we call it? And Mark was like, well, how about Anime MetroCon? I'm like, well, that's too long of a name. And he's like, okay, what about MetroCon? So Mark himself came up with the name for Anime Metro and then for MetroCon. Mark is responsible for that 100%. So all these people out there that don't know who he is responsible for the name. And then Mark started running all the video rooms over there. He was responsible for running video. And he missed a couple years here and there due to, hiccups with, his health and financial stuff and everything. But overall, Mark was the one in charge of all of it. So everything that Mark had done at that point in time had led to finally the creation of MetroCon and for, at the time, back in the day, becoming finally the largest anime convention in Florida. And Mark was, a catalyst for all of that. Without him, it would not have happened. Had I not met him, had he not been an inspiration to me, had he not been somebody I could talk to about this for years, most of my life, that wouldn't have happened at all. And from MetroCon, spawned a bunch of other conventions that spun off, and he helped run them. So even all the way up to Holiday Matsuri today, which, regardless of what anybody else says, is my opinion based on the same formulas, the same other stuff. Other people say, yeah, well, there are other anime conventions. Well, there were, and I'm not putting down any other convention that existed, but specifically, there are conventions out there that in some way, even if they may not want to admit it, are related back to how MetroCon worked, and thus, owe Mark at least, for it happening. Because a lot of what Mark did also was copied around, everywhere. He was like, oh, we can show anime rooms. But Mark put things into specific blocks, other stuff. He was, he really tried to make it a special experience for somebody. We had a motto that Mark had, pretty much, I believe he came up with it, which was, anybody can put a VHS tape in a player and hit play, but you have to, but when you're doing this out there, it's a show. So anybody can just turn it on, hit a button, but that's not what we're here for. We're here as, to present it to you so that you like it, so you want to see it, so you want more of it. Not just, hey, here's a thing, and any convention out there, especially Florida-based, that has that attitude, regardless of whether they know where they got it from or not, it came from Mark. So the entire anime community in Florida owes Mark Dmuchowski, and the moniker he went by, Cosmo Police Justy, or just Justy, which if you haven't seen that OVA, everyone should see it. It's fantastic. Cosmo Police Justy is a space cop manga OVA thing about a telepathic police officer in the future. He might as well have been Jean Grey from the X-Men. He was basically God by the end of it. But it was really cool, and Mark really liked that, so he started calling himself Justy. But yeah, everybody in Florida, especially, and I would even say, go so far as to say a lot of places around the nation that took a lot of ideas from MetroCon that now they don't know where it came from, and they might not even admit they got it from there, even if somebody knew. But a lot of it goes back to Mark, and that is certainly not undercutting anybody else that ever did anything for a convention. Not at all. I mean, a lot of people worked hard at this. There were a lot of anime fans back in the day, but it's the untold story of specifically Florida and how Mark influenced that. Was I a part of it? Yes, but the story's not about me. So the story's about Mark. I am only in this story as the fact that I drove Mark around. Yes, I did stuff with Mark, and I am in no way going to undercut Mark's value in what he did and what he meant to, all of us. And that's the other thing, by the way. Mark was always in a wheelchair. He was born with a spinal defect. He was born with a deformity that never let him use his legs. He never walked a day in his life. And Mark always wanted to be treated like a normal person. And he told me that way early on. It's, you will treat me like a normal person. I do not care. If you treat me like I'm in a wheelchair, I'm going to be upset. Which led to all kinds of crazy shenanigans over the years. Because, you can't, you tie your best friend's shoes together. Well, I can't do that with Mark. So we, and what some people might feel was mean or cruel, like, why would you do that to somebody? We treated him like a normal person. So, we get into arguments and we walk by and flip one of the brakes on his chair. So he'd yell at us and then, go to wheel off and just turn left or turn right. Like, oh man, you keep on brakes on, and people would say, oh, that's horrible and mean. But the fact is, in those simple acts, it was treating him like a human. It was treating him like he didn't have a defect, because, you play pranks on your friends and jokes and whatever. And I mean,
so just for joshing around with each other, just sort of screwing
with
each other, you'd lock his brakes.
Oh yeah, we would go even farther because he'd mess with us. Yeah. And it's like, people are like, well, he can mess with you, but you can't mess back with him because, well, he's disabled. And we're like, nah, man, he's one of the gang. So,
if nothing else, you mess with him a little more to balance things out, because you can't use that kind of excuse with him. Otherwise, he'll be indignant about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, there were a couple times, man, he fell asleep. I stole his wheels. And it was like, hey, what the hell? Now, one time this happened, I did this in a con suite in front of an entire party of people at the end of a convention. And they were all like shocked, like, oh my God. I'm like, I have known this man for 25 years. If anybody can do it, I can. And so we stole it, stole the wheels. He was asleep. He woke up. Oh my God, somebody stole your wheel. Oh my God. And he's all upset and everything. But he finally woke up and he's like, hey, what the hell? So I gave him his wheel back. And people were like, how could you do that to him? And I said, hey, everybody, I want to. So
you pranked him and you took one of the wheels off of the chair?
Yeah.
Or
I took a wheel off, I hit it, and I said, somebody stole your wheel, and he got all upset, but he was asleep, so he woke up, oh, what's going on, and so he's like, let's get the guy. I'm like, can you roll down there on three wheels? And he's like, I think I can, he's still partially asleep. And he goes, but the other one has a flat tire on it, and people are like, so this guy stole your only good tire. And of course, everybody's looking at me like, well, Roy, you're going to hell, but when I was done, when I gave him the wheel back, and Mark was sitting there, I said, how many of you have talked to Mark? And they're all like, no. And there's a room like 30, 40 people in it. And they're thinking I'm a terrible person. And I said, hey, everyone, now you know Mark and you have a story to share with them. So I expect everybody to come over and be friends with him and talk to him because, hey, man, he is the big guy for anime in the state. You guys would not be here without him. So now everybody's got a story and you now have no excuse to be his friend, because people were put off by the fact of, I mean, seriously, people would be like, oh, I don't know, he can't move his legs and he's in a chair and he's kind of disabled.
Can he
talk?
I
feel uncomfortable around him. I'm like forget you guys.
Can he talk? Yeah. Can he form an opinion of his own? Yeah. Is he a human being? Yeah. Then fucking go talk to him. Right,
exactly. And that was a problem. And Mark knew it, and that's why we treated him like a human in front of everyone, and we had the utmost respect for him because, even if we got in arguments, it was Mark is our friend. So, it's the fact you can bust on your friends, but when somebody busts on your friend for something, well, you better have a good reason, so, cause again, everybody owed Mark, but nobody knew. And, he tried to help out a bunch of cons over the years and he got screwed a whole bunch of times too, because people would be like, thanks for the work, man, now bugger off. Because, things got crappy in the community and people got very selfish and, they did, what the problem was is people, once they got to a certain point, and this is still true today with people, they do not want to acknowledge where things came from. They don't want to acknowledge where things started at, because then it would take away from them. And that is a thing there. And there are plenty of times I've seen where he was not given credit for things. So when I was doing stuff, I finally said, look, man, I know you've done panels and other stuff or whatever, but you need to be a guest at conventions. So we started making him a guest at places, and he became, the anime historian, because he had been around for so long. He had a very unique viewpoint on anime and the culture and where it came from point A to point B. And going from anime was something that if you wanted to find it, you really wanted to find it. It wasn't a casual thing. It wasn't, maybe I'll turn on Hulu or Crunchyroll or whatever, and I'll watch some anime today. What's on Netflix? No, this was, if you were into it, this was a passion you had, and because getting it was hard.
It was like, okay, you want to work to find it. It was a hunt. It was a quest.
Right, and now I had the large anime collection. He didn't have room for it, but I would not have had the collection I had without him. And he had full reign to use the collection I had, which he helped me acquire, because he also didn't have the finances to do it, to show. So I funded his passion. That is not about me. I would not have had it in any way, shape, or form, or know how to do it without him. So my collection was his collection. Show it, do it. That was it. That's how it worked. And so I wanted people to remember who he was. So I made him a guest, and so he went and did his history of anime. He did all kinds of stuff with that at conventions, from Metro to, Holiday Matsuri even. And, up until recently. And, people didn't really listen too much because, oh, that's old. Who cares? It's like, why do I want to see old stuff? And
because
that was an issue.
That old stuff is where the new stuff comes from, where it's inspired by, man.
Exactly, but why would you want to watch that? Ew, that's old. And that's another thing that was a problem within this community, is that once you pass a certain age, which is in your 20s, ew, you're old, ew, why are you into this, ew? Well, I don't know, maybe one day long ago, I was younger than you, and I was scrapping to try to find this stuff, and it's been a lifelong passion of mine. And so people even are like, oh, why would anybody old be into this? Well, I don't know. Hey, have you gone to Japan and see how old the people are that make it? Because, some of those people are pretty old. Where do you think this stuff comes from? And that's a severe problem in the anime community. And once Mark hit a certain age, then it was, ooh, you're old, to people. Not everybody, but I'm saying, like, there was a stigma associated with, why are you into this? And, couple that with the chair and everything else. Now, other people really liked him, especially anybody that knew where it came from. They were like, Mark came from the old school days of where this was hard to do and everything else, and you should respect this guy because of where he came from. Well, I don't know how many people are even going to care about this interview. I don't know how people are going to look at this and go, oh man, yes, this guy deserves a massive amount of credit, for helping out Florida back in the day. I'm sure that also once the interview comes out, there's going to be people that didn't like him at all that will be like, oh yeah, oh, Mark was my great friend. Oh yeah, he helped out. Hey, come to my convention or come over here. And I'm not going to call any of those people out, but I will say, as long as everybody does one simple thing, and that is acknowledges Mark's history and the fact that he was instrumental in the formation of anime and anime conventions in the state. Not all of them, but he was influential in the media with it for a very long time, then I am fine. Then that's cool, because this man has a legacy that, deserves to be out there. And as a matter of fact, I have some articles that he wrote that I think are buried somewhere that I need to go find, and I probably will get to you to try to share them, because he wrote at least one or two articles on the whole concept of anime and other stuff. A long time ago, but he did. And some of those articles were used, a lot of different places. So, and again, Mark was mostly local to Florida for all of this. Other people, yes, there are other people that, shaped the course of, anime coming over from Japan. They were very instrumental in acquiring stuff and getting licenses and, stuff. If you go back and you look at, Carl Masek, who did Robotech, and stuff, we looked up to those people because, say what you will about them and their careers, they did what they could to get it over here at the time in a way that they had to do it because they had a passion for it. Well, Mark had an incredible passion for anime And to this day, still, I mean, well, like just even recently, he had been talking about, we got to get the word out about anime. Of course, I joke with him like, dude, it's not the 80s anymore. I think people know. But even still, he wanted more people to know. And he wanted people also to know about the old school stuff. Don't forget it. Don't forget Yamato. Don't forget Gatchaman. Don't forget, Dirty Pair or City Hunter or Urusei Yatsura or anything old Takahashi. Don't forget the old stuff because it's where it came from.
Like
and
Tekken.
it's so easy to forget any of it because, look at the new Shining. Look at the new Shining. And when you look at the old stuff, ew, that looks old. Well, yeah, but if you look back at it, here's the first anime that did this. Here's the first anime that did that. This is where it came from. You can see where everything was built from this pivotal anime that started the genre. And people don't want to see that. Just like people don't want to remember people and where they came from because it's a distraction from from this moment. And I think it's an incredible disservice if people do not remember Mark and what he did and where he came from. And that, he started a lot of this. Now, Mark was 10 years older than me. So I believe he was 60 or 61 when he passed.
I saw in his bio he was he passed at 59 here.
Oh, 59?
Yep.
Yeah, his birthday. His birthday was in December. He was just gonna turn 60 then. So, I believe his birthday was I think it was the 28th of December.
Yes, it is.
And mine's on the 30th. Yeah, and so he was going to be. Oh, that's right. We were just slightly off. So, in 10 years, but I mean, he was 26 when I met him then, when I was 17. So I mean, we had a lifetime together. I mean, so many conventions we went to, so many things we traveled around the entire state for, so many promotions for different things, trying to get people in Necro. I mean, I can't possibly share everything with you in this. It's too much. It's a constant of being with somebody every day and dealing with this incredible passion they had and what they wanted out of life. And, and the thing is, Mark was not, Mark didn't have a happy life in some cases. He knew about his disability. Of course, he lived with it. He was constantly, battling some sickness. He always had intestinal problems. I mean, he had a deformity that he lived with for his entire life, and he made the most of it as much as he could. And he certainly tried his best to make everybody happy around him, even if he wasn't. And that's what made him happy. Anime made him happy. Sharing it with people made him happy. If you've gone to a convention, you've seen Mark sitting around in a hallway with a laptop and a speaker and playing anime music. Because he was always like, hey, listen to this. This is really cool. Listen to this theme song. And he would even play old school theme songs. A lot of time people would be like, I don't know what that is. And he'd be like, well, it's the theme song from Elgheim or from SPT Leisner or something, or a Battler Dunbine. And the people would be like, I don't know what that is. I don't care. Moving on. And it was, we'll find out. This is where it came from. And Mark liked new stuff too. He was always showing AMVs at conventions, of course, even when there wasn't a room for it or something else. He was always showing it. And AMVs in Florida have kind of gone away. People just don't seem to want to make them anymore. And I'm hoping that'll change, And, I know that, people can say what they want about me, and I don't freaking care. Mark supported me his entire life because, he knew the truth about everything. He knew what the real deal was. And he never wavered from that once. He defended me. He went against a lot of people often about stuff. But I know that in what we do in the future, we will absolutely dedicate something to him. And if anybody's got the right to do that, it's definitely, Samantha, myself, Tony, a bunch of the people that grew up with him, or Samantha was around for a long time around him. But, the old school group that's around, I contacted everybody I knew today, and they're massively broken up about it because Mark was a big part of our lives. And, a lot of us wouldn't be where we were today without him. And, I expressed this to his brother. His brother didn't care for anime at all, and actually gave Mark a pretty big hard time about it, his entire life. he meant well. He was always just like, I don't understand why you like these cartoons. And, he did give him a lot of hard time. But I expressed to his brother how much the state owes Mark and that people don't realize it. And even though his brother never liked the stuff or understood it, he does understand how mainstream it is today. And that, yes, of course, corporations bought anime and brought it over and everything else, but prior to this, the culture, the convention culture, especially in Florida, of people wanting to see it, was driven by people like Mark, especially. We would not have that culture that wanted the commercial part of it without people like him, because then there wouldn't have been groups for them to target market and to say, hey, we want to do this. So Mark made it possible, especially here, for that to happen and to create that market. And I think people need to remember him, and I think people need to remember him quite well, as far as, even if they don't know who he was or they never really find out completely about his life, they need to understand where this came from. And without people like Mark, they would not have what they have today. And they need to be grateful for that, because, what's going to happen when they're gone? If they, did they leave something for other people to build upon? And I think that is the key thing. And Mark definitely left something that people are still building upon today, even if they don't know he was the foundation for it in a lot of cases. So that is probably the best story in a nutshell that I can talk about with him without getting into, very, very specific things that would probably take a long time to talk about. But I'm certainly able to answer any questions for you. So if there's any questions you'd like to ask about Mark's life that I can try to answer, I definitely will, or try to fill in any specifics you would like.
No, I appreciate that, man. I was actually going to say, I believe what I'm going to wind up doing here with the story that you've given me, with this information about Mark's life, is how this is going to play out is, since I'm putting together this podcast for this coming Monday, and we also wanted to discuss the death of Sulli, the K-pop idol, as well.
Correct.
What I'm going to do is two things. First, we're going to I'm going to take as much of the information that you gave me here, and I'll paraphrase it all and include that in the discussion that we have with Jose and with our friend Casper, and the three of us guys. We're going to discuss that all together. And with your permission, I would also like to air this recording as a separate sort of bonus episode, more like giving your testimonial out of your own words, and we can put that up. I don't know how much of a reaction or how people will react that I'm coming to you for this information, but from everyone that I've asked about Mark, they've all pointed me in your direction, so that you knew him the longest, and that's the reason why I'm coming to you for this, because like you mentioned, Mark, he was an instrumental part of the Florida anime community here, and he does deserve the recognition for that.
And thank you. I appreciate that. I think probably some of the best thing to do would be to take not necessarily the entire recording, but to take clips from it that probably would work the best, if you think that's okay. And then also, you can put my name on it. You cannot put my name on it. It's up to you what you want to do with it. You can just say we have a recording. People are going to know who I am. Personally, at this juncture, I don't care what people say about me, because I know the truth. And if anybody's got a problem with me, people, as you well know, nobody's ever confronted me about it, to my face. Nobody's ever had the guts to come up and ask me what happened. But Mark would tell them, and will it give you some backlash? It might, or you can just say, well, we've got a recording from somebody, here, and not name names. You can do whatever you want with that. My thing is, regardless of how anybody feels about me, at all, that should not color in any way, shape, or form what Mark did for the community.
Right.
You know, and
the whole thing,
and
the point is that this is about your testimony on how you knew Mark and his contributions to the community.
right.
And it's not about you. If anyone wants to discuss about you, then they can.
That's something completely different, and this should have no effect on what it is whatsoever. I just happen to know him the longest. He was a stand-up guy. He was great. He spoke his mind. He spoke the truth, and he knew the truth. You know, he absolutely knew the truth about. I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking. He knew the truth about anime, and about the use of it, and what it should be about. Anime back in the day. Here's the thing. Anime back in the day was about seeing something wondrous and new that wasn't here. And people don't get that now. Anime is mainstream, and you can just turn it on the TV. I'm not trying to go, oh, back in the old days. No, that's not it. It's the perception of something new and wonderful and awesome, and the fact that you had a connection to something that not many people did. You liked a thing because you wanted to find out. If you were kind of a nerd back in the day, people picked on you. Well, you're a nerd. You like comic books and other stuff. All that stuff wasn't mainstream like it is today. It wasn't cool at all. As a matter of fact, it was considered like you're an idiot for liking any of it. So if you liked anime, it was an underground thing that drew people who like comic books and other stuff together. Clubs back in the day were not about, hey, what's your next costume going to be for this convention? It was a meetup for people to finally find a place where they felt like they were at home. And that was what I carried from Mark when I created MetroCon. Originally was a place you could feel at home and safe. And many conventions aren't that anymore. If it's like, oh, it's my home. Yeah, okay, great. But it doesn't have the same impact. It doesn't have the same feel. And Mark wanted there to be a place for everybody to feel like they were accepted, because he wanted to feel accepted. You know, I mean, you can look right at him at any point in time, and you could tell he wanted to feel accepted for who he was, and not based on what he appeared to be. I'm in a wheelchair. You know, I can't do the things that anybody else can do. And that was part of it. And that is missing to a major degree in many conventions.
Yeah,
now.
I'm over here just, you're reminding me of like the first time I ever attended MetroCon. It was 2006. And I'm remembering, I told you this before, that I was originally going to be meeting up with friends. They were going to let me stay in one of the rooms at the Embassy Suites there, and they blew me off. And and I was literally with a duffel bag with costumes and a bicycle chained to a lamppost outside the convention center, because I didn't know where the bike racks were. But like one of the things that I did was I found the anime room, the video room that Mark had set up, and I was over here checking out the AMV Hell series there. And
I remember when you ran those. Yep.
Yeah, and that was like one of the first things that I was introduced to, and my friends sort of knew about them, and he was also airing a whole compilation of AMVs. They were really old ones too, and I couldn't I don't remember what they were, but
I can probably tell you some of them. Absolutely.
But just my own experience was like he never had like anything sour going on. Whenever I would come across him at conventions, I would always like give him a high five, like, "Hey, dude, how's it going?" I like half the time I wouldn't remember his name, because I'm just getting into this stuff, so I don't remember people. But
but he was a video room guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's what he was to me. And just seeing that he was just very content and very much in his own element when he was setting up the projection room, the video rooms, and this is at multiple conventions. I don't remember the last one that I saw him in. I think it was a Holiday Matsuri. I don't remember. I know that he was working Omni Expo. I know that he did other conventions, smaller ones. There was ShadowCon and
ShadowCon, Catacon, BellCon, EvilCon.
Yeah, definitely EvilCon. I definitely remember him there. But like there was
Necro, obviously, but yes.
But yeah, the idea was that like anytime if I just needed to relax and just take a seat and watch something fun, I'd head to the video room, and there he was, like in the corner with on his laptop, setting up his next queue and everything, and watching everything there on his own. It was just seeing people come in, sit down, relax, chat with each other, watch stuff, and folks would come and go throughout the convention throughout the whole time, and he'd be there, just rolling along, just continuing to share anime with everyone.
Absolutely. Like I was saying,
yeah.
Mark inspired me because I was picked on as a kid. I was bullied, and Mark inspired me to create something that was a home for everybody. And it's Mark's. It's really, it goes back to, like I said, the foundational. A lot of this goes back to Mark and how he perceived things, and and enacting some of the things that he wanted, even if he couldn't exactly 100% articulate what he was talking about at times. Like it was like, I want it to feel kind of like this, and the point is now, I feel that his legacy has been muddied, because if you look at conventions, there's a lot of conventions out there right now that are, we are giving you a home. See, here's our home, and it's very manufactured. It's a very, hey, come here and we will be, part of, you can be a part of us and everything. And it's not an organic thing. It's not natural. It's not like, hey, you were picked on, you're different, you don't understand. People don't understand you. Come here, we can all be together. And this is now turned into, this is your home. Come here. You want to be here with us. And it's more of a, join us type of a thing. It feels, to somebody walking in, they might feel like this could be a home, but I'm telling you, it is not the same from what Mark wanted. It is not. It's more. It is not a place for people to get together because they need to find somebody that is like them, not somebody that will use them just for sales.
It's more of a slogan than an actual invitation to be a part of something unique.
Right, and again, people are using that, and in my opinion, in some cases, twisting what he came up with for their own needs, and it looks the same, but it's not the same. And Mark was a unique individual, and his contribution to this community is incalculable as to what he did. And I certainly would never take all the credit for things I've done without throwing his name out there at all. It's impossible. I can't go, everything I did was me. Well, I may have done the work, but I couldn't have done it without him. I couldn't have done it for, us starting off together. I can't take credit for that. I can take credit for the work I did, but I certainly cannot take credit for the inspiration for it. And my love of certain aspects of anime came directly from him. And, do I miss him? More than you'll ever know. Again, he was a stand-up guy. He knew the truth. He didn't lie. He liked making people happy. And, that's all he ever wanted to do, was share his enjoyment of anime. This literally pure enjoyment of something that was unique and different. And it didn't talk down to people. And people had talked down to him all his life because he's in a chair. He literally was lower than everybody else. So people would literally talk down to him. And I'm not talking about just they had to look down and speak. But they would talk down to him because, again, they did not view him the same way. The 80s were rough. They were hard. As the 70s, 80s back then, especially for liking anything like this. And when we enacted all of this, everybody was treated the same. And, I wish that could be said for things now. And the problem is certainly not related to gender, race, sex. That's not the problem in the anime community. right now. And Mark had called this out several times, just to throw this out there too, because of, let me give you a quick look at his politics just slightly. It wasn't about race, gender, sexuality, identification. It's not any of that. It's about people trying to take advantage of other people. That's what it all comes down to. It comes to classism and elitism. And we had that back in the day, but it was different. The classism and elitism back in the day stemmed from who had the most videotapes. Or I have stuff, but I turn it around on my shelf and you can't see it because, you don't need to know what I have. And there's always been a form of classism. And even today with the people, a lot of people going, this is your home, come here. It is a form of elitism and classism if you cannot genuinely say this is an absolute genuine product. If somebody isn't truthful or straight from the heart on everything, and if it sounds like snake oil, it's snake oil, is what it is. And Mark did not like any of that. And he was very opposed to the people that did it. Because at that point in time, you are taking what he considered a pure thing, anime in and of itself, for the art form, and using it for your own means. And I'm not talking about running an AnimeCon. I'm not talking about charging for tickets. I'm not talking about charging for entertainment. I am talking about he did not like anime used for manipulation to coerce people into things. If you wanted to buy a ticket because, man, I want to go see anime, man, that was it. He would go to a movie theater opening when they showed Lopta Castle in the Sky over at the Tampa Theater, man, we were there. He was like, we're going, because it was amazing. He wanted to support that. Yes, let's support this. So anything that he considered to, be, like show off what anime is supposed to be, then that was what he supported. He didn't support anything twisted. I'm not talking about like a convention that only shows anime, or we're pure, we only show anime, or we're only an anime version convention, or whatever. And I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about the pure art of it that people want. Like the best example, what? I will give you the best example I can give you of a piece of anime. I will give you two that he absolutely loved because it was anime for the sake of being awesome. One was Daicon, which any convention I have ever done that is related to anime has always started with Daicon, and it is always because Mark showed it to me, and it's always because it has honored him, as well as it's a fan-made video showing what the passion of it used to be, all right, and where it came from. The second one was also it's a Ghibli video, and if you haven't seen it, it's called On Your Mark. And it's a music video done by Hayao Miyazaki. And if you have not seen On Your Mark, you need to go see it. And I will never be able to watch that again without probably breaking up because of him. Because it was beauty for the sake of beauty. And it's short, it's not long, and it is an amazing piece of animation. And Mark championed showing that anywhere, that and Daicon, because of its purity and form of what it was. And that is what's missing, in my opinion, from conventions. It's that baseline thing. It's what made Mark up. It was the base core of his personality. And I don't think people understand that anymore. And I miss it, and I miss him. So it's the best thing I can say about it.
I hear you. I'm gonna look up that video myself. On Your Mark, actually made by Hayao Miyazaki. I'm gonna look that up and
just jump on YouTube. I guarantee it's on there.
No, you got it, man. And I really do appreciate you letting me record this discussion, this conversation, and get this information about Mark's life and everything that he's contributed to the community. Of course, if I don't know if there was any, because I know that you shared one anecdote about pranking each other that just came off the top of your head. Was there any one situation or a prank or a gaffe that Mark wound up getting you on, like a really big one that you might recall?
Well, okay. I got the best thing he ever did, and this may sound crass, and of course I'm not trying to, insult anybody, and by crass I mean it's not an R-rated thing or whatever. It's something he said that people might take offense to, and if you take offense to this, well, too bad for you. That's how I feel about it. It's one day, my friend Tony came up to him, and he had a picture of a stormtrooper that it was a guy that had a custom stormtrooper outfit made, and he was in a wheelchair. And he said, "Mark, isn't this cool? Look at this. Here's, I just want to show you this to you. Here's a guy. He's like you. He doesn't give up. And he's in a stormtrooper costume in a wheelchair, and he just, he's out there cosplaying and doing stuff." And Mark was like, "That's cool." And Tony's like, "What? You're not? What? That's it?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not impressed." He's like, "Why aren't you impressed?" He's like, "So it's a guy in a wheelchair wearing a costume. What's different than that than anybody walking around wearing a normal costume?" And Tony didn't understand him, and so they got in this big argument about it. I mean, it got to the point where it got heated, right? And we're all standing around looking at him, because there was more than just them there. I mean, our whole group was there. And so Tony's yelling at him, he's yelling at Tony, and finally, Mark said something about not being able to use his legs or something, and Tony decided to throw a jab at him, which was pretty rude, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, you think you're so big? Why don't you stand up and fight me like a man?" And without hesitation, Mark just turns around and he goes, "Oh, yeah? You think you're so big? Why don't you sit down and fight me like a cripple?" And that was it. We lost it. We were all on the floor, and the argument was done and over with. But it was probably the best zinger that I ever heard out of him. He just nuked Tony so hardcore, with that.
Jeez.
And, there was nothing to say. It was just like you win, good sir.
I got nothing for that.
Yeah,
oh my God.
And Tony just was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry." It just diffused the whole thing right there. And to this, I mean, to just even recently, we've talked about that. And like, it was the best one-liner that Mark ever got on anybody, like anybody ever. And it was just such instantaneous and just such a straight up comeback for something.
Oh Jesus! I'm actually trying to compose myself a little, because it's the longer I'm letting it sit in my head, I'm like, oh my Lord, this is horrible and perfect, and oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, being there for that was utterly fantastic. I mean, Tony pranked him at one point again after that. We were at Necronomicon, and he was DJing at a booth, and Mark was, and so Tony tied a cable to I think it was a long extension cord. He tied it to a podium and then tied it to his axle. And I was like, "Hey, Mark, Debbie needs you outside." And Mark's like, "Okay." And he goes to roll out there, and bang. And he's like, "What the?" And he couldn't move. He was like, "What the hell?" He was tethered to this thing. And so we played a prank on him, and he's like, hey, wait, guy, what do you do here?" So Tony had to get under his wheelchair and untie it all and everything. But it was funny because Mark did play pranks on us, but it wasn't anywhere near like the same thing. Like Mark liked to joke around. Like, Mark would say a lot of puns and make a lot of jokes and stuff and everything. And anytime, when we did this to him anytime he felt depressed. So anytime Mark started feeling depressed, we would prank him, because then, it reminded him that he could be pranked and that he was just one of us. And that was the case. So it was never, ever done. People were like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. That's horrible. It makes somebody feel bad. You're terrible people." Really? Well, it was the opposite. The opposite was true, because it made him feel special. Because why would anybody ever do that to somebody? Like that. He was treated like glass all his life. He could be broken. Don't do anything to him. Don't breathe on him wrong. And by pranking him this way, he was one of us. And, if anybody says anything to that or takes offense to that, then they don't understand and will never understand how somebody in that situation can feel, and the depression they can have their entire life of being trapped in a wheelchair but never walking, and everybody treating you like you're less of a human being. And when you do that to somebody, when you beat them down that way, even unknowingly, by, oh, look at you, you're in a wheelchair. Oh, that's so terrible. Yeah, I know I am. I'm here. I live with this every day. That.
You don't need a constant reminder of that, man.
Yeah, it is worse. It is psychologically worse when you treat somebody like that. I'm not talking about you don't know the person and you walk up to them and prank them. I'm talking these are your friends. These are the people that you've known for forever. And yeah, you're like, hey, what the hell, man? Then afterwards, that was pretty funny. That was great. Like he'd be like, yeah, you got me. That's awesome. But Mark had a lot of gaps himself by himself. Like there was a time, man, when before Metro, before all any of that stuff, man, it was early 91, somewhere in there, and we were all hanging out at the comic book shop, and I remember it was Tony and I and this guy named Nick and Mark, and then the owners, and the whole thing finally was shut down because we closed that place out at night, and we were out in the parking lot, and Mark was kind of showing off in his wheelchair because every once in a while he popped wheelies and stuff, and different things, and so he decided he was going to talk to us about some stuff and roll backwards. Well, that particular parking lot had a little bit of an angle, and it's unusual in Florida, I know, at least the bottom half of the state, there's no angles, it's all flat. But this particular parking lot had a little bit of an angle. I remember he's rolling backwards. I was like, Mark, stop. Mark, and no matter what I said, he just kept going, and I was like, Mark, stop, listen to me, stop. And he just kept going. I said, okay, never mind. Nope, you're not going to listen. And it was just too late, and he hit a pothole.
Oh, boy.
And he flipped backwards, and it just ejected him out of it like a catapult.
Oh, man.
And we didn't think it was going to be that bad. We're like, oh, crap, so we ran after him, and he rolled for a bit. And we were like, dude, are you okay? And he's like, what the hell? Why didn't you guys tell me? It's like, well, we tried to tell you. I was like, Mark, there's the thing. You got to stop, and that was the thing about Mark. A lot of times he didn't want to listen, and he did not want to listen. Mark had a very set way of doing things, and he didn't want to listen to people at times. And so it was funny. Afterwards, he was like, that was pretty funny. I pretty much got out of that chair, didn't I? I'm like, yeah, there was a couple times he zinged right off of the end of a sidewalk, too. Like, he'd be rolling along, and he just wouldn't see it, and he's like, wee! And we were like, oh, God, So he was a bit of a klutz, even in a wheelchair, which was funny, in the end. And even to him, it was pretty funny. He was like, oh, yeah, whatever, we'd make jokes and like, what, are you going to put it on two wheels this time on the side? You're going to pull a Dukes of Hazzard here? What are you doing? But it was all in good fun. It was good-natured, and he always took it incredibly well because he did it to himself half the time. It's like walking along and like, oh, I tripped over air again. People that are just klutzes and clumsy, and, I do it. I'm sure everybody has at some point. And the thing is, if you lose the ability to laugh at yourself, which he could, then there's a huge problem. And that's a problem in the world today. People can't laugh at anything. Everything's so serious. Everything's offense culture. I'm offended by this. I'm offended by that. I'm sure somebody out there is going to hear some of this and me telling these stories, and I'm offended for Mark. How dare you? Well, you don't know Mark. Don't be offended for him. Don't be offended for somebody else that heard it. How about be offended that people don't treat each other right anymore? How about be offended that people don't treat people, they treat everybody like, oh, we can't offend you, we can't offend you, we can't offend you, to the point where it in itself is offensive. And Mark hated that. He did it, as far as I know. Everything that he said about that was, if somebody treated him like that, like, oh my God, you're this precious little China doll, he'd get upset. So, and that's our society today, because nobody can be offended over everything, and they don't understand what the deal is, and they don't understand anime cons, they don't understand where stuff came from. Mark did, and everybody, like I said, owes him a debt on all of this. So, say what you will about stuff, and I will say one thing about me here, and that is, if you play this segment, say what you want about me, people don't know my situation or understand it or whatever. Mark did, but whatever, nobody should, because of him being my friend, should this demean anything that he ever did. And if that is the case and somebody thinks that should be that way, well, then you're wrong, and you're treating him with disrespect because of that situation. So that's the only thing you have to say there, because this man needs to be treated with an amazing amount of respect for his contribution to the community. And I wish more people had. I wish more people had gotten to know him or tried to get to know him, which is sometimes why I did the things I did, like I said, so people would get to know who he really was. And a lot of those people that said they would never did. And those people in this community are some of the ones that might come over and say, you know, well, I knew Mark all my life and know this and that and the other. And that's not true. There's a lot of people that didn't, and a lot of people that say they might. And I would like a very nice contribution to him, like people that actually knew him and actually worked with him, but cared about him enough to actually be his real friend, you know, rather than using his legacy to just promote their own. And that is something that I think needs to really be done, which is why I appreciate this interview, because now I get to say what Mark meant, what he was, what he did, and what he should mean to everybody. And more importantly, I think what Mark would probably want is for everybody to treat everybody like they used to back in the day. You know, he was very tired of going to anime cons and watching cosplayers treat other cosplayers like, oh, you're brand new, and you don't know, how to do a costume very well. So, oh, you're not me. He didn't like any of that stuff. He was very much against it, and he didn't feel that he had any way to change it. And it upset him a lot. It really did. The elitism, how it turned from, everybody loving anime into how to take anime and make it as a tool to ridicule someone else was a problem for him. And I absolutely agree with it. And anybody out there that takes anime and uses it as a tool for that, well, they should be ashamed of themselves. Because these are people that, somebody gets into anime and they really want to make a costume and it's made out of duct tape and the best they had, and they go to a convention and they get laughed at, and it's their best effort. And what do? They run away, and then they don't want to come back to a convention. And how did he feel? I mean, how do I know he felt that way? Because going into somewhere in a wheelchair and going, hey, what do you want, man? You want some cartoons? Back in the day. Yeah. And I'm talking from people that liked anime. He was there to try to be like, hey, you got stuff, I'll trade you. That's the exact same thing. And that's what is happening today. And I wish everybody would take a very good look at Mark and his life and realize this is not the way to treat people. And that if there isn't a change in the community at some point, it's going to turn into something that is just ugly. A lot of it already is, in my opinion. And I think that needs to change. And as long as it changes without, people twisting it and using it for their own purposes, I think that's fine. As I said in the beginning, Mark was very pure of intent on what anime should be about and what it should be used for. And it should be something that everybody can enjoy and that everybody could feel, safe liking, and they wouldn't be bullied because you were in a group. And it was a home, as it were, where everybody enjoyed something really nice. And if that's the legacy that I can help leave for him, and then that is my duty and my job is one of, he's been my best friend for forever. And I owe him a ton. And if anybody thinks this is about me because I'm talking about it, well, then how am I supposed to tell about Mark? How am I supposed to say that? And this I had to say my part in it because I was there with him, but I'm certainly not going to take any credit for anything that he ever did. And, so I hope this is taken in the spirit that it's given, and I don't want anybody to ever forget who Mark was, because he was honestly the best of us back in the day, and now people don't remember him, and that is a problem. Is he still the best of us? He's not here anymore, and he's still the best of us, of where it came from and what it should be. And I think we could all use to be how Mark was. about a lot of things. And I hope he would like what I said. He'd probably tell me to shut up and I don't need to say anything. And it would probably embarrass him a lot. But, if I can do anything to help and to make things how he would have had it be, then I hope people will listen. I hope people will take it to heart, and I hope people will go out there and make a change for the better. I hope people will bring other people in the anime and not just, hey, watch this thing, but hey, man, come here. Let me help you make a costume. Let me do this. Let me do that. That's what it's about. And that is from the person just getting started into it to the most famous cosplayers. If anybody out there, in between, anybody out there ridicules anybody for, oh, your costume's a piece of crap, or, oh, you like that anime, whatever. I'm not talking about kidding around. I'm talking about when you ridicule somebody for liking something that you don't, not a healthy discussion, not even an argument. I'm talking about ridicule. Then that was an anathema to him. He hated it. So I think if we can remove that and any manipulation out of the anime community, which I know it's hard to do, people are human, but that's what he wanted gone. So,
all right.
Sorry to ramble on about stuff, but I think this might be one of my only opportunities to say it.
No, I get you. It's all right. When it comes to something this personal and this passionate, of course, people are bound to run for a while, but that's fine. That's sort of how we run stuff on our program, anyways. Except it's three of us trying to talk over each other and come to a consensus on things, but that's fine. I appreciate your input. I appreciate you taking your time and talking about Mark and what he means to you, and
well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I hope
anything that you can use from this, if it makes more sense to cut it up and put it in pieces, then that's absolutely fine. So, or not use it at all, or just use a transcript. You're good to go with whatever you like.
I appreciate it, man. I think what I'm going to wind up doing is just releasing this in just one long uncut thing, because I don't want anyone thinking that, oh, he's editing for ulterior motives, he's leaving stuff out. I'm not leaving anything out. If anyone wants the raw files, they can ask me. I'll send it to it. I don't care.
And I have no problem with that either. And if anybody's got a problem with anything with this, I would say bring it directly to me. I'll make a challenge out there right now. Don't post online. Don't be a good little armchair warrior and be like, oh, that's this guy talking. No, everybody knows where to find me. Come and talk to me about the situation personally, because people don't do that. They just sort of like to get online and give their opinions where it's nice and safe. Well, you know what? How about this, guys? Mark never did nice and safe. He went out in the world in a wheelchair. He couldn't walk. He had to use, hand controls to drive his vehicle. Nothing Mark ever did was safe. So the world was a horrible place for him. Everything was out to destroy him constantly, just because of how he was born. So if anybody out there has any problem with him, me, anybody else, you confront it directly. And anybody that posts online about stuff and that wants to, diss him online or diss anybody associated with him online, well, then he had way more guts than you. He would confront it directly. So confront it directly. Come right up and ask the question. Come right up and ask about him. Come right up and ask about everything. And that is another problem with this community, is just the social media where people, will just say whatever they think without knowing the truth, without asking the truth, without, it's an easy way. I can just make an opinion. I heard this. It must be true. Well, it's not. And that's the problem. And, there's a lot of people that said bad things about Mark over the years. Oh, that's that guy in the wheelchair over there. And they'd make comments or nasty things or whatever, without ever knowing him, without ever walking up and talking to him. Why? Because he was in a wheelchair in a room. And that was it. And that is horrible. And if you can't figure out that staying online and just saying stupid crap about people is wrong without knowing anything, without asking about the situation, without going about and finding out about it yourself personally 100% from the absolute source. Well, that was what Mark was for. He hated all of this, and he believed that the anime community got away from what its intention was. And when people started using other people, that's when people got hurt. And you'd be surprised who used who, and how people were used, and what was done to people, including Mark. I've left out a lot of things in this about Mark's life. I have 30 years plus to go through, for him. So if you want to know about him, you want to know, even more, I am fine to talk about it. And I am fine to talk about any situation. Because I think the thing that Mark stood for the most was the truth. And there's a lot of truth out there in this community that he wanted people to know about. Especially just, where anime came from. And why he cared about it so much. And I wish he was here. I wish he was here to give this interview himself. And I think, I pretty much think he would have said all the same things. So,
all right.
I'm happy for you to release this, man. I really thank you for it. I really thank you for wanting to find out about Mark. There's going to be, just to throw you some information out there real quick, there's going to be a service on Saturday. This Saturday coming up on I believe it's the 19th.
Yeah, Saturday the 19th.
Yeah, it's a visitation with his family.
If this is coming out, this actually would be coming out the following Monday. So
this will be Monday, so it'll already have happened by then. But,
yeah, exactly.
But I don't. I'm trying to remember if we covered what happened to him. Actually, I don't remember if I even started with that.
I didn't want to actually bring that up here, but if you're okay with bringing.
Actually, I'm fine with it because Mark again was all about the truth. He had medical problems. He had mostly gastrointestinal problems all his entire life because of the fact that he was born. And if anybody's offended with this word, I'm sorry. He was born deformed, and he was, and he knew it. And so he had problems with his internal organs his entire life. And they never thought he would live anywhere near this long. The fact that he lived to be, almost 60 is just a miracle. And he had a lot of problems, just recently, with his health. And I guess they thought it was kidney stones. They weren't sure. And they asked him to go to the hospital. And, Mark's always been stubborn, and he thought he was fine. And his brother found him his heart gave out. On Sunday morning. And it was very devastating to all of us because a lot of us didn't get to say goodbye to him. We were all busy doing, conventions and other stuff. And, that's very rough, but Mark lived as he wanted to live, and he was very set in what he wanted to do and what he didn't want to do, and you couldn't change his mind. It was very hard. It was very hard to change his mind because, it wasn't the fact that he knew he was right and he knew better. It was the fact of, he thought it through and then he just decided this is what he wanted to do. And that was that. And he had to do that his entire life because of, how he had to live. And he thought he was okay. And, well, he wasn't. And I don't believe, from everything I know about Mark and I know about his situation, I don't believe, and this is hard to say, but I don't believe it was anything painful. I believe he just stopped. And if I can say one thing about, mortality in my friend, I always knew this was going to happen at some point, and I'd always figured I would outlive him because of all of his problems. But, if he had to go in any way, him just one day turning off, as it were, is probably the best way that I can think of that, for my friend, if he had to go, that would be it. There wasn't a protracted hospital stay. He didn't waste away. He didn't go through a seriously long protracted illness that was torture. and so there's nothing to be happy about, but I guess I've been saying I'm very happy that it wasn't something,
that was protracted, that was prolonged,
that
was
he would have
suffering.
considered horrible, because he did not want to go out that way. Him and I had talked several times about it, not at length, but I knew kind of what he wanted, and at least this was close to that. And it's certainly not what I want for him, as far as you never want any of your friends to ever go, but it is what it is. And I wish I could have said goodbye, but there was no chance. Even his family didn't get a chance, really. It was just, he just wished off. And that is the best thing I can say about it, is the fact that it was, at least it seemed like, from everything that I was told, it was very quick. And, but I want everybody to remember, what he was, what he cared about, and who he was. And I want everybody to understand just the magnitude of stuff that he went through in his life, with not being able to walk, and the difficulties that came with it, because it wasn't just the fact that he had a spinal injury and couldn't walk, he physically couldn't use legs. And the challenges he had, and yet he helped build this entire community from the ground up.
Right.
So say what you will about him, say what you will about anybody else, whatever. Anybody that's out there, even anybody complaining or anybody that's saying anything that's an armchair warrior, well, you owe Mark. And you do. And whatever you're saying, well, it doesn't hold a candle to what he was. So I would hope people appreciate him, and I would hope people appreciate what I've said about him, because he deserves a lot of respect.
All right,
That's my take on it. I can keep going on for hours, and I probably will, and you'll be like, okay, I can't release this, and start for too long.
No. Dude, this is coming out exactly as it is, uncut, so I appreciate this. Thank you very much for your time here, and thank you very much for filling us in about Mark Dmuchowski. Thank you for this, Mr. Harms. I appreciate it a lot.
No problem. Juan Ravensblock, thank you so much for the opportunity here. I really appreciate it. And, good luck with everything, guys. Anything you need from me ever, just let me know.
Sure thing. Thank you very much. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary friends. Holy cow, that was a lot of info. That was a lot of storytelling, and it's a really interesting insight into how the anime community had been in Florida back in in a time before I was even born, and I actually would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Harms for this insight, and to once again extend my deepest condolences to the friends and family of Mark Dmuchowski, those who are affected closest to him. And I would like to once again thank you for listening into this episode of the Black Files and keeping your mind open to this experience, to listening in about this fascinating human being. And I'm hoping that people come out of this episode with a better appreciation for the guy, for an understanding of the anime community, how it's evolved, and hoping that this episode and the actual episode where we discuss Mark and where we discuss Sulli, we hope that this helps enhance that experience a bit. I don't know too many people who are going to have over an hour and 45 minutes to listen in about a single guy's life, but I'll appreciate you if you do. So with that being said, again, I want to thank you all for listening in, and as I state on the main episode, I want you all to take a moment to reflect on Mark Dmuchowski's life, and hopefully we can remember him with the veneration that he deserves for his contributions in our little community here, not just in Florida, but for anyone else who is a fan of anime, who is a lover of the anime art form. And I would like to thank you all very much for listening in. So for now, I guess I'll just go ahead and plug away. Continue to follow us on Facebook.com/TheRavensFlock, Twitter.com/RavensFlock13, Instagram.com/TheRavensFlock online. And you can listen into this podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher. Wherever you get your podcast, be sure to rate and review and give us thumbs up and subscribe and share to our different platforms for this audio podcast. And of course, go ahead and subscribe to us, hit the notification bell, give us thumbs up on our main channel, youtube.com/TheRavensFlock, home of Los Amigos Play, the Black Files, and the Ravens Flock. Thank you very much for listening in to this bonus episode of the Uncensored Interview and Review podcast of the Ravens Flock. This has been